I started a joke, which started the whole world crying over time.
Ladies and gentlemen, welcome to Source Material, the comics podcast, episode 205. We've got an extra special episode tonight as we will be sharing this as part of the recent efforts for a thing called the Superblog Team-Up. And that being said, we may have some new ears tonight. Gentlemen, Mark Radulich, Ronnie Adams, behave. So,
whoa.
Now, let's real quick, just before I hop into intros here, kind of describe our show. So, the best way that I could probably describe what we do here on Source Material is it's a book club for people who read comics. Now, there's quite a few podcasts out there that are very similar. We have our own type of humor here. We just, we're a laid-back kind of deal. We have a good time, read some comics, and we talk about it. So be aware there's spoilers all over the place. So if there's something, sacred here that you don't want spoiled, then please feel free to read and come back and join us at some point later on down the road. The way we do things is the topic that we choose is usually tied in with something else that's going on our network. If you've subscribed to this, you've subscribed through the Radulich and Broadcasting Network, and we have all sorts of different content out there. We talk TV, we talk movies, we talk wrestling, we talk boxing. We tie this in with things. Now, last week, for example, we covered the first 8 issues of the New Teen Titans because our Tuesday episode was going to be us discussing the Titans on the DC network, DC app, whatever it's called. DC Universe's Titans, as Facebook told me it was called. So we kind of tie those in together, and we try to keep that theme throughout the week. But every once in a while, we have some episodes that we, extra special. We just take off, do our own thing, or tie it in with something else. And tonight is one of those deals where we're, like I said, tying this in with something that's been around for a while. The good thing is we've got a guest on here that can kind of give us the lowdown as to what the Superblog Team-Up is, and we'll get to him in just a second. But first off, let's talk about our patriarch, Mark Radulich, the guy who brings the Radulich and Broadcasting Network to your ears. Mark Radulich, tonight we're going to be talking some Speedball. And again, it's not the Speedball that your clientele bring to you every day there at the old jailhouse. Are you ready to talk some Speedball?
Let me see what my notes say here, my Be Good notes. Yes, Jesse. I'm excited. How's that?
Very good. Very good. I felt, it was very genuine. It was there. And Ronnie Adams of the Screaming Boy podcast, buddy, are you ready to talk some Speedball?
Yeah.
That's a good answer.
I am.
All right. Good answer. Good answer.
A little frightened by Mark.
As always. As we all should be. And joining us tonight, helping us out in this effort, is Chris Bailey. Chris Bailey, you've come here on to the Source Material podcast, helping us out with the Superblog Team-Up. First off, why don't you do us a favor and tell us about the Superblog Team-Up? What is that all about?
I go by the pen name Charlton Hero, and I've also got a little group of a little blogging contingent known as the Superblog Team-Up. And basically what Superblog Team-Up is, we started in 2013. So basically a bunch of like-minded bloggers got together and we decided to do some blogging eventing. So started out with some little events. We had a 5 group going together, and that eventually spawned into 10, and eventually ended up with 20. And who knows? You know what? This thing transforms every single time that we have an event. So basically, how it works: we decide on a topic, we pick a date. Everyone, in the style of their blog or podcast or whatever it is, we decide to take their own spin on a certain topic. So we started out with the day we walked away. So it was a history of superheroes who basically gave up their costume or superhero lifestyle, and we made some posts about that stuff. And you know what? It seemed to get over with the audience, like a wrestling event. It got over, brother.
He made the first wrestling reference on this podcast before we did.
Take a drink, everyone.
It's not like getting over, brother. You know what I'm saying, dude?
Hang on, he doesn't know what I mean by that. If you're playing the at-home Radulich and Broadcasting drinking game, every time a wrestling reference is made, take a drink.
Yes.
Oh, I guarantee you'll be drunk by the end of this. All right. So anyway, we got together. We've done a ton of these right on up till 2017. We took a little break with Death of Superblog Team Up, but we're coming back on January 23rd for Redemption. And it just so happens this little show right here, all about Speedball, is all about redemption as well.
That's right. And it's curious that I chose Speedball. Like I said, I don't know much about the character. I didn't know much other than, some of his early stuff. We did a podcast on the Civil War, so I knew he was a part of that and helping getting that whole event started, pretty much being the result of what happened. I thought to myself, who represents, or what could I grasp onto? What character has went through a bit of an evolution that I don't know much about, but tried to redeem themselves in some way? And Speedball's unfortunate mishap that started Civil War and then turning himself into a character by the name of Penance, which we will get into, was something I was aware of, but I wanted to learn more about, because this character, it seemed like, was trying in some way to redeem himself. So that is kind of what led me to choose this character and this topic. But I did want to shout out Chris here that I had no idea that your little icon on Twitter was actually the face of Speedball. No clue.
It is. It's been since 2013 I've been Speedball.
In our conversation on Twitter, I sent everybody a copy of the upcoming source material schedule. And that's when Chris got in touch with me. He's like, dude, I'm all over the Speedball thing. And I'm like, okay, sure. I didn't understand why he was so excited about talking Speedball. Yeah.
Yeah, it's an interesting story. I have a dirty history with Speedball. Let's put it that way. Okay. I've been there since day one and still on the go. So
all right.
It's funny how many times I've heard that in my life, that people have had dirty histories with Speedballs. That's a drug reference, everyone.
Mark Radulich works at a jail. Well, let's talk real quick, dear. Chris. We are all comic book fans here in some way, shape, or form. Let us in on how you came to comics.
I've been I don't want to date myself,
okay.
But I've been a comic book fan since the age of 6. Now I'm a lot older than 6 years old right now, so we won't get into that. But I've been collecting ever since the early 80s. So my first comics were like Teen Titans #1, Justice League number 200. How I got into comics actually was pretty funny. My mother worked at a convenience store, and one of the fringe benefits was when the comics were to be thrown in the garbage, she would get all the coverless issues.
Ooh, nice.
So I had stacks and stacks of coverless issues, and maybe repeats everywhere. I had Swamp Thing, I had Iraq, Son of Thunder. I mean, you name it, I had that crap. So I really got into comics just by my mother just bringing me just loads of these coverless treasures. Right? It was amazing. So as I progressed, I started to pick up issues as I saw them on spinner racks, and like I said, Teen Titans was an early love of mine. Justice League, mostly the DC titles. As I progressed into buying, of course, Amazing Spider-Man became a favorite title of mine. I started to build my library. Got up to right now, I think I own about 7,000 comics. That's what I've retained at my parents' house right now. I'm not allowed to bring them here.
Dude. Wow.
Yeah. There's no space in the Bailey household. The Hero compound is full to the doors with everything but comics. So. So anyway, then I gained myself a little thing called the Overstreet Price Guide. So then I used to barter with my friends and swindle them out of their comic books. So then I amassed some of those, like certain treasures, like let me see, what kind of name drop here? Blue Beetle and Booster Gold and Blue Devil. I mean, all those things. 80s DC was my thing, man. And I've been a comics fan all my life. I dropped off about the early 2000s when the pricing got out of whack. Digital brought me back into the game, and I've been a comics fan ever since. Still reading to this day.
We're getting into Speedball here. Can you kind of give us an idea as to why he's your favorite character?
Oh my God! Sit down, grab a chair. Back in '86, Shooter, it was around the Marvel 25th anniversary, and Jim Shooter was creating something called the New Universe. Don't judge me. So I bought all these titles. Kickers Incorporated, Spitfire into Troubleshooters, and the idea behind it was to introduce a whole line of new characters that were outside of Marvel continuity. Okay, a brand new universe. It was called The World Outside Your Window, the New Universe, and it was a total disaster. It died very early. But one of the concepts that was batted around was a new character called, Speedball. So Steve Ditko, who had come and gone into Marvel's good graces, He left during the heyday. If you don't know who Steve Ditko is, number one, shame on you. Number two, he created or co-created. Co-created is the key word here. Spider-Man and Doctor Strange with Stan Lee. So two big deals. He moved on to Charlton after a dispute with Stan Lee, and he created Speedball much later. So where they didn't have any room in the new universe, that thing died before he could get Speedball debuted in there. And he actually was brought into Marvel proper with Amazing Spider-Man Annual number 22. I got to say, I really, really love that issue. Unfortunately, it was during the very sad crossover called the Evolutionary War, which I don't recommend to anybody. It's, birdcage liner material, folks, and not really good. But if you saw the cover, you'd understand why I was instantly hooked on Speedball. Right on the cover, it was like a really bombastic, retro-looking cover. Speedball is coming at the screen. He's got like a Kirby pose going on. He's got this crazy blue and gold costume. He's got these like kinetic bubbles around him, and it just brags. Enter Speedball, the mass Marvel. So channeling your inner Stan Lee, right? True believers. So, I was a big fan of that book right away. I had no idea he was going to have a solo series, but I was pumped for it. Now, the only thing with that was if you got to know Steve Ditko. So Ditko, who was high on objectivism and the teachings of this Ayn Rand person, who got all these social justice concept, and he had a bad rap for, being hard to deal with, and he was passed over for many jobs, and, basically a recluse who, it was really difficult. However, Tom DeFalco, who was on board with Marvel at the time, used one of his favors to bring Ditko back on board and use his new character. So this was supposed to be his big break. Ditko was only doing like scattered appearances on like ROM, Space Knight, and my favorite, Chuck Norris and the Karate Commandos for Star Comics.
Nice.
That was good stuff, I will tell you. And then he broke into the Speedball solo series. And that book, I have to say, was one of the biggest disappointments that I've ever had. I fully expected something that was going to be incorporated into the Marvel Universe. However, this book was like on an island to itself. So it lasted a mere 10 issues. It was out of touch and out of time. It was like Steve Ditko literally woke up in 1965, wrote this book, and somebody found it in 1989, and that's what happened. So, but what a strange book.
I can remember going to the spinner rack and seeing the issues of Speedball sitting there. And of course, when you don't have a lot of money coming your way as a kid, you got your allowance. You got to pick and choose what book to spend your money on. Speedball was always there, but it was nothing I ever picked up. I wanted whatever else I could get my hands on, Incredible Hulk or, some of the bigger names. I had no idea, though, it only lasted 10 issues.
Yeah, if you read it, 10 issues is a mercy killing. Trust me on that. So to be fair to the comic, it was a classic Ditko book. I mean, Speedball itself was a classic take on almost like a Spider-Man origin, okay? Mm-hmm. So, Robbie Baldwin gets in the classic, laboratory accident, and he gains kinetic powers, and he's able to deflect stuff and bounce like crazy. And he also has a cat called Niles who becomes Speedball's sidekick Hairball. And that's an interesting thing as well. And of course, Steve Ditko couldn't help but put his beliefs in there, so he made his parents two conflicting social justice warriors, we'll call them.
Oh, wow.
So one guy's a lawyer who has very objective views, and then his mother is a retired soap opera star and they always argue. So they're like arguing parents, and he's got this terrible upbringing. He's like a rebellious teenager. So
that sounds fun for a comic book.
Sounds great in principle until you figure out that this guy has nothing to do with anything and has no chance of even surviving in the Marvel Universe. So they gave him like a cast of rogues galleries that sucked. Oh my God. So it looked like something off the Batman 60s show, man. It was like the ghost of Springdale High. They had the bug-eyed voice, the Harlequin hitman, the two-legged rat, the bonehead gang. Yeah, you know what? You're a bonehead for reading this crap, because it was like 7th and 8th string villains. You never had a chance.
Wow.
And guess what? It didn't sell.
What makes you a fan then? I mean, it sounds, are you just a big fan of the underdog here, or what's going on?
No, I love the character, and I like what Ditko actually did with the series, but it didn't have a chance. Like, the sales were miserable for it. And usually back in that day, Marvel would try to throw a Hail Mary at people, and they would, their go-to was always to stick Punisher or Wolverine or Spider-Man in one of their issues that's failing.
Yep.
But Speedball didn't get anything. He wasn't tied into any events that were going on. He had no guest stars. There were nothing going on. He was just him and the Harlequin Hitman or the two-legged rat. That's all you had.
Two-legged rats.
I'm sitting here thinking how right you were, how they put Spider-Man, Punisher, whoever in failing series, and I look back at so many things I bought in the 90s that Spider-Man just showed up in like NFL Super Pro.
Yes,
and,
Super Pro. Super Pro even got a guest star. Poor Speedball.
Sleepwalker.
Yep, Sleepwalker.
And
deep cuts.
Man, yeah. Man, I had number one issue, baby, because it was going to be worth $1 million.
I'm still waiting on my million for that one.
You and me both.
But I think the whole deal was, honestly, I think that they wanted Ditko to get the hell out of Marvel, to be quite honest with you, because I think he was being a little bit of a pain in the ass. So Ditko left the company and he went over to Jim Shooter's other universe, the Immortal Defiance. And jumped on some classic books like DC's New Gods, which I don't think anybody was reading at that time. But anyway, he also took on he was also started to draw some coloring books for Transformers and even did some ads for like Big Boy Burgers and stuff like that. But I don't know.
Wow.
Anyway, Speedball, for all intents and purposes, was dead after the 10-issue run. However, he was reborn with New Warriors, and that's really when I took on the character, and it really found its legs. I mean, he was teamed up with Firestar, who was on Spider-Man and His Amazing Friends, Marvel Boy, which, I really don't even know what that's about, Namorita, Kid Nova, not even Nova, Kid Nova, damn it, and my favorite, the ultimate badass, Night Thrasher.
Night Thrasher, yep. That's right.
Was he Kid Nova or was he Nova?
He was Kid Nova to start, and he turned into Nova after. He had like a red helmet, and so it was strange.
Red and yellow and brown, and just didn't look good at all.
So what is redemption? All right, dictionary.com. Redemption is atoning for a fault or mistake. One of the biggest things that happened in the Marvel Universe in the 2000s was the Civil War event. It was ignited by the New Warriors and their reality TV show taking on some unsuspecting villains. What I did was I said, okay, I want to try and figure out a way to chart a path. This is the beginning of Civil War through Robbie Baldwin's life and his decision to become Penance, where he believes he can absolve himself, possibly redeem himself by finding the villainous Nitro, exacting revenge on him, and then actually returning to Stamford. I don't know. Was it Stamford, Connecticut? I just know it's referenced as Stamford throughout most of the books.
Stamford, Connecticut, the home of WWE headquarters. Take a drink.
Yes, it is Stamford, Connecticut, Jesse.
Thank you. He's going to fit right in here. It's going to be a good night. I've decided to put these issues together to kind of chart a history, to kind of show the path to redemption from Speedball to Penance back to Speedball again, and see, if I learn anything and if our guests here have anything to talk about. So where I started with, I went to comicvine.gamespot.com to kind of get a good idea of the history. Like I said, didn't know much about this character, so I looked at the overall history, and that's kind of where I've got the idea for these issues that we're covering. So what we're covering tonight, Civil War #1, which I just titled as The Sin, Civil War #1. The road to redemption begins, in my opinion, Civil War Frontline #10, which is our first appearance of Penance. Then we have what I titled as Revenge is Absolution. Finding Nitro, Penance, Relentless, issues 1 through 5. And then I put on here Facing Your Past and Redeeming Yourself with Fear Itself, the home front. 7 parts through 7 issues. Here we go. The events of Civil War #1. Speedball, who is a part of the New Warriors, who at the time are a group of superheroes who have a reality TV show. I wrote it all down. It's just speaking. It's going to be hard. Who have a reality TV show. Their angle here is to catch villains, and of course, the greater the challenge, the greater the ratings. The current target, a suburban hideout in Stamford, Connecticut, that Cobalt Man, Coldheart, Speed Freak, and Nitro are residing in and attempting to stay low. When the villains spot the New Warriors, they make a run for it. As Nitro attempts to escape, Namorita gives chase, cornering him by a bus near a occupied elementary school. Not wanting to go peacefully, Nitro uses his power and unleashes a massive explosion, killing and injuring scores of residents, completely incinerating the school and all of its students. 612 souls in all. These events set in motion a large-scale movement of registering superhumans and, of course, those events of Civil War. Now, fast forward to Civil War Frontline number 10. We've skipped a good bit here and ended up in the 10th part of a story called The Accused. To catch everyone up, Speedball was in a coma after the events of the Stanford explosion. Able to recover quickly, he finds his powers have left him. Soon after, a father of a young girl who was slain at the school finds Robbie and attempts to murder him Jack Ruby style. Robbie survives, but fragments of the bullets are still lodged in his spine, causing him great pain. So if he moves too fast, it hurts really bad. But immediately after this event, new powers begin to emerge that appear to be fed by the pain he suffers. Feeling anger and guilt over the path his life has taken, Robbie agrees to register, and after an encounter with his would-be murderer, Robbie intends to embrace the physical pain he is enduring as a way of paying for the people that died in Stanford. Burning his old Speedball suit, he reaches out for a new set of duds. This one being specially designed with 612 spikes on the inside to cause him pain and channel his powers. Abandoning the moniker of Speedball, Robbie Baldwin is now Penance. Relentless comes out in 2007. This is shortly after shortly after Civil War occurs. Now, Robbie Baldwin, as Penance, is serving as a registered superhuman and a member of the villains turned good guys, in quotes, team called Thunderbolts. Many around him are beginning to doubt his sanity, as it is clear that he is struggling through PTSD. In this story, Baldwin puts together a plan to track down the man that literally ignited Stanford and the Civil War event, Nitro. The only problem is, Nitro is in a Latvian prison under the watchful eye of Dr. Doom. Not only that, as part of the Thunderbolts, he is constantly monitored. Robbie faces an uphill battle just getting to Nitro, duping his own teammates, facing Wolverine, who had his own run-in with Nitro during the Civil War event. Robbie also battles Dr. Doom and eventually confronts Nitro, leading to a thrilling conclusion. So I wasn't reading any of Fear itself. The way that they had these books laid out was there was like 4 parts to each book, 4 different stories, I should say, to each book. And there were 7 issues where Robbie is back to being Speedball. All right. Now, this is written by Christus Gage, which is a name I've heard before a lot recently, actually. And also Mike Mayhew, along with art by a guy by the name of Rain Barreto. And I will tell you right now that this is probably some of the better art.
It's the best art since Kingdom Come.
Yeah, and putting that up there with Alex Ross, that's big. That's big. I was really impressed.
It is 100% the antithesis of Scott Keith.
His name is Sam Keith. Mark Radulich, you son of a bitch. All right.
Right.
Yeah, right. All right. Things have changed. Robbie
Stuart
is back.
Keith is terrible.
Oh, you're terrible is what it is. You're terrible,
I'm bleeding
sir.
from the nose.
Things have changed. Robbie is back to being Speedball and having the Speedball powers back, along with those of Penance. He is also a teacher at Avengers Academy, and that doesn't seem to sit so well with the general public. Robbie has been going in disguise to Stanford to help out an organization called Damien's Gift, founded by a Miriam Sharp to help others in need. When he is found out, the citizens and Miriam nearly turn on him. When the events of Fear itself, hammers fell to earth. We got some crazy stuff going on with the Asgardians. A lot of people are freaking out. That's pretty much all you need to know. So as Fear itself and the events begin to unfold, some villains escape from the raft and head to Stanford, attacking the town. Speedball attempts to stop them and is knocked out. As the villains leave, the citizens come back to kill Speedball, but Miriam intervenes. She then tells Speedball that if he wants to help, and see, all hell is broken loose across the United States. You know, there's so these superheroes are stretched thin, and Miriam tells Speedball he needs to go help others where there's no superhero presence. And with the help of some dimensional doors supplied by the Avengers Joe Costa, Speedball agrees, facing Juggernaut in one spot and Atuma in another. When Atuma nearly wipes out Speedball and all of Newfoundland, wait a second, with a tsunami, Speedball and Jocasta attempt to save the residents that survived. I
survived, guys. I survived. Thank God.
Also helping Miriam broadcast the images to spur others and give hope. When the Sisters of Sin show up to kill Miriam and broadcast her message of fear, Speedball bands with the citizens of Stamford to defeat them. Afterwards, Miriam and Speedball discuss their positions. Miriam explains she forgave Robbie a long time ago because of her son's death, but has not absolved him of his responsibility for the tragedy. And with her forgiveness, Robbie may finally move on, understanding that the weight of the Stamford tragedy, the very thing that drove him down this path, is not his alone to bear. So, all right, Ronnie Adams, I'm going to start with you, man. I mean, I think you were reading Civil War at the time it came out, and I don't know if you read any of Frontline or not, but so what's your thoughts here of Speedball and what he's going through?
Gosh, survivor's guilt is the first thing that comes up. The main thing that I got from it is that, I mean, honestly, does he have to feel guilty? I mean, that's up to the reader that, you know, obviously he feels like he has done wrong. So it was a complicated thing to process because you kind of want to be pissed at him, then you don't want to be pissed at him because you feel bad for him.
Yeah.
Gosh, it was such a good take on that because what does he go through when he finds out that, you know, all these people, including children, have, you know, they blew up a daggone school.
Yeah.
Well, you know, how does he handle that? How would you handle it? Of course, it's a fictionalized fantasy version of what, you know, something like that. But how does a person process all these feelings that they're going through? So I just wanted to see where it went.
Did you have any opinion on Speedball becoming Penance back when it was original? I remember hearing when it was originally happening, and I wasn't reading, but I remember there being a bit of a sour reaction to that. Like, this is not who Speedball is. Did you have the same type of reaction, or?
Not really, because of everything I just said. I mean, like, well, how would somebody like that react? Because Speedball was always known for being fun-loving, sarcastic, just like Chris Elmas, like a Spider-Man character, almost, you know, street level kid that was thrown into the superhero lifestyle. So how does somebody, you know, I feel bad if I, you know, forget to turn a light off when somebody tells me, you know, so I can't imagine what somebody would go through with something as great as that.
Yeah.
So I didn't really, it wasn't you're not doing the character justice. No, the character is evolving because, you know, of a damned if you do, damned if you don't situation. He feels like he should have died. He didn't. How does somebody cope with that? And obviously he didn't have the best coping mechanism for it. But, you know, he's doing what, you know, the best is a very human side of a superhero.
Yeah.
So, you know what? Civil War really encapsulates what Speedball is all about, actually. So he's a character who didn't belong anywhere. New Warriors rejected him at the beginning. So, you know, his first introduction to the New Warriors, he's rejected. Nobody wants him on the Avengers. He happens to just fall into place with the New Warriors by bouncing and defeating Terex by basically by accident. So he sort of gets into the New Warriors out of nowhere. This is some backstory leading up to Civil War, of course. And of course, by the time we get to Civil War, you know, he's basically playing hero. You know, he wants his name out there, so he's filming a reality show. You know, he wants a New Warrior name out there. He wants Speedball's name out there. He wants to be famous, basically, is what's happening. Anyway, when everything goes down, one interesting thing that I've always thought about this is that Speedball seems to take the fall for everybody else. This is Namorita's problem. I mean, she caused the explosion with Nitro. I mean, you know, it was like the Vince McMahon limo explosion. Oh, there you go. Take a drink. Take a drink. That's
wonderful.
Good. Now you're done. Okay. And anyway, he kills all 612 people, 60 of which are children. So when you think of the Penance character, it's really deep, man. Like I don't know, it's almost offensive to me. I mean, this guy puts on a suit full of internal spikes, 60 of which actually pierce the body. And when you really look at it, the 60 individual spikes inside his costume represent the 60 dead children, and that's pretty deep, man. So you know, the Penance character itself is is a real takeaway from Speedball, the original character. Like others, I didn't really like Penance at first, even through Thunderbolts and the whole 9 yards. I didn't even like his look, honestly. I thought he looked like one of Kirby's Celestials. I don't know if you've ever seen those, that character design. That's similar. That's what Penance sort of looks like, with some extra spikes. So, I wasn't really into the design, but I like the idea of the character where he wants redemption. He wants to redeem himself and, pay up for what he did to all these people. But actually, he didn't do it. I would be like super pissed at Namorita. Like, what did you do, bitch? You ruined my life. You know what I mean?
Did anybody else survive? Because Night Thrasher died, right? Because I remember them mentioning
Yes.
like
Everyone bites the dust.
okay.
Well, actually,
Well,
it's so a lot of the New Warriors at that time they weren't the original group. So I mean, there's several that weren't part of it. I mean, they had some different folks in there, and they all bit the biscuit. Night Thrasher, I'm still upset that he's dead or that he was killed off in this particular thing. I'm probably the only one in the world who's upset over that. But anyway. One interesting thing, when Speedball recovers and he's brought out into the public or whatever, and he's shot. So one interesting thing, if you take a look at the artwork of when he's shot, it's actually Lee Harvey Oswald. So take a look at that shot. It's the famous photo of Lee Harvey Oswald getting shot in public.
Yeah.
They literally do that with Speedball. So I think that's what they're going for there. Speedball, of course, joins the Thunderbolts, and not only is he leading a double life, but he's also, in the back of his mind, his end goal is to get to Nitro. And he ends up finding him over in Latveria, with Dr. Doom, who was hiding Nitro out and all that stuff. And anyway, when he finally gets him and he sticks him in that Penance suit, man, that's some gruesome stuff. So, when he extracts revenge, he gets to the bottom of it. One of the things that we don't really see is that after the fact, after he leaves the Penance suit, he goes back to being Speedball. His powers are reactivated. However, he retains the Penance powers. So he's actually got two power sets at one time. So he goes through, and this is pretty dark as well. He starts cutting himself to activate the Penance powers. So
really,
so not only does he, and there's some horrible scenes where he's talking to the Avengers, and in secret he turns around and he rolls down his glove and he cuts himself, and that's activating his Penance powers. Right? That's pretty.
That comes up in Avengers Academy. It was actually one of the kids in the academy that caught him doing it.
Exactly.
And ratted him out. Basically.
Let me add to that that self-mutilation is actually one of the coping mechanisms, one of the negative coping mechanisms for PTSD. It all ties together.
The character reminded me of a priest or a monk that would whip themselves.
Well, there was one point there was a Marquis de Sade. Marquis de Sade. Now, was that person known for doing that to themselves?
Oh, Jesse, the stories I could tell you of the Marquis de Sade. So have you ever seen the movie Quills?
No, I have not.
So the Marquis
de Sade. Horrible.
Yeah, the Quills is an amazing movie. Put it on your list.
But it's horrible to watch.
Right up there with the Holy Grail for right now. Okay.
Kind of. But the Marquis de Sade was a writer in France who was eventually imprisoned in a psychiatric asylum for writing porn. Hardcore pornography, Jesse Starcher.
Oh boy.
And there was definitely an element of sadomasochism in his pornography. Whips, chips, chains, and dips.
Dips? All right.
We'll talk later.
Okay. Ronnie, you were saying before I really should have never took Mark down the road.
I don't even know.
Would you have bet money I knew who the Marquis de Sade was and was able to do a 5-minute thing on him?
Absolutely.
I'm actually kind of frightened as to why you're so enthusiastic about this dude. It's kind of scary. It's kind of scary.
Know your history.
To get off that whole subject of the Marquis de Sade,
please, as quick as possible.
If wasn't it the Da Vinci Code?
Yep.
Where the monk that's chasing after him, performs self-mutilation, as an act of penance. Anytime they feel that they've sinned or done something wrong, they beat the crap out of themselves with a whip, the cat o' nine tails. Which essentially was what was used against Christ when he was whipped, before the crucifixion.
Mm-hmm.
So you've got that element. You've got the element of cutting, with how people cope with PTSD.
Yeah.
I'm trying to stress this word. Okay, yeah, I said it right. So it's a very dark time for that character. And then when I was reading Avengers Academy, and he was an instructor, he was a teacher in the Avengers Academy, and one of the kids, I forget how she got into his room or why she was going into his room. She could take in corporal form, and she went into his room and caught him cutting to activate the penance power. And they went to visit the memorial for in Stanford, these people attack Speedball and the Avengers because they're still pissed off at him about the whole thing, and he basically says that not here and screams not here, unleashes his penance powers on them.
And on the citizens,
on the people that are attacking him. They're not citizens. They have sort of armor.
Oh, okay.
And kind of like the stereotype, not stereotypical, but the typical almost 90s, early 2000s Iron Man villain ripoff.
Okay.
So they come after him. He dispatches of them, and actually one guy who was a police officer thanked him for saving the memorial. So they didn't damage it. And he said a lot of people, it's going to take a lot of time for a lot of people to get over this, but it was kind of like a healing moment for Speedball in that.
Mm-hmm.
He said, but he was like, we're some of us, it's not going to take as long. So referring to himself, it's just one of those things where like, man, it's just it's a dark time for that character, but it's also a time of, if the writer gets it right, it's a time of healing for him as well, over something that tragic that happened in his life.
I find it, I don't know if it's ironic's the right word, that Speedball's wanting to become famous. This is a character that a lot of people wanted to succeed. We just heard Chris talk about that. Wanted to succeed in the Marvel Universe, and they didn't. So it's interesting how, this character's come back, and they've joined the New Warriors. They do this whole reality TV thing to kind of, salvage or at least pick their career back up in some way. And it's almost like crossing that fourth wall almost. Like, yeah, this character actually is not as popular as you really, a lot of people think he should be. And then that's kind of representative of what's happening in the comic book as well.
I think when it comes to Relentless, I think the entire story of him hunting down, going to any lengths to get to Nitro, I think that was the biggest part of that. You really get to see a lot of character depth when it comes to Penance. Is probably the best time and the best, written that this character has ever been. So I think if you're looking for a great Penance story, this is the one. The gruesome ending to what he does to poor Nitro is, a very fitting end, and a very just desserts to that bastard. So. I really think it's a great Penance story, and if you're looking for something to touch base and see what this character is all about, this is definitely the issue. Yeah,
this was written by Paul Jenkins. He did a good job here, in my opinion. There's a couple moments that I'll go ahead and throw out there. Everybody thinks that he's gone off the deep end. I mean, everybody thinks he's gone off the deep end. He's stolen these nuclear codes. He's went and found this guy by the name of Robot Master, and everybody thinks he's going to actually launch nukes at Latveria just to get to fucking Nitro. So the Thunderbolts come after him, and just as the nukes are about to go off, they're scrambling to try and stop these things, and Robbie's nowhere to be found. So all of a sudden, the nukes don't go off. And they're trying to figure out, well, what is going on? And then the only thing that flashes across the screen is thanks for the plane. So Robbie does this whole ruse in order to get the plane, in order to go over to Latveria and find Nitro himself. Yeah, dude. When he finds Nitro, slaps the suit on him and said, "This was never built for me in the first place. This was built for you." And he puts that suit on Nitro. He got revenge. Ronnie, I mean, did you have a chance to jump into this one?
Yeah.
What'd you think?
The only thing I can do is echo statements that have already been made, because it's, oh man, you want him to have that closure. You want him to, even though it is brutal and some may not agree with the method, still he got it. He did it. And from that point on, he didn't give a crap what happened to him.
Yeah.
My favorite part of the whole series was the fight with Dr. Doom, just because fighting Dr. Doom is usually very hilarious to me. Like, Dr. Doom kind of reminds me, take a drink, everybody, of I can't remember which wrestler did. It's been a couple where the heel wrestler will just start commentating his own matches. Yeah, and Dr. Doom has this weird thing about talking through all of his fights, and he's just Dr. Doom was one of the best Marvel villains, especially in the hands of a talented writer. And he's just so pompous and over the top. So, he's fighting somebody like fucking Speedball, and he's like, make your case and then I'll kill you, that sort of thing. So I enjoyed the confrontation with Dr. Doom and eventually Dr. Doom letting him have Nitro. I thought all that was fun. The other thing, weirdly enough, was I liked seeing Tony Stark struggle with trying to lead Shield and deal with Norman Osborn and just kind of keep all these balls in the air. There's just something kind of funny to me about, here's this guy who's usually we're back to balls again. Who's so cool, calm, and collected. I mean, I think about like the Robert Downey Jr. portrayal, especially in like an Iron Man 2, when he's sitting before Congress and he's like, giving Gary Shandling the finger and all that other shit. You can't have it. And he's as cool as the other side of the pillow. And then there's this situation where he can't control anything, and he's got all of these these out of control wild elements and he's just trying to get a handle on things so that another suburban neighborhood doesn't get blown up again, and he can't. Like everything is going wrong all the time, constantly. You have Norman Osborn, who has his legacy as the Green Goblin, and now he's like an administrator of this Black Ops team, and it's just like both guys who have had such issues with control in an out of control situation with a guy like Penance running around with his own agenda. It's not a comedy, but it was comedic. You know what I mean? Hey, take another drink. You almost expect him to just like, fire me? I'm already fired. Woo! This was the Norman Osborn fucking elbow drop his jacket.
That'd be perfect.
My first thought as I read through this was, initially when you proposed doing this, I was like, Speedball, he's like a D-level character. Who the fuck cares? He's like not into this at all. And so when I got your reading list, I was like, ugh, I haven't like been this not looking forward to a reading list since I was in college. Oh my God!
Damn,
I gotta read this shit.
Miles the cat is cursing you, sir.
But let me go ahead and say, I'm a big enough man, figuratively and literally.
Hey.
Anyway, hey, honk, honk. To admit when I'm wrong. And Jesse, like if I get inspired by something, the first thing I want to do is like shoot it, you know what I mean? Not shoot it with a gun, but like I want to film it. Like I always see things in movies and TV. And I was telling you, like, to tell you how into this I was, we got home from seeing the double feature of the Death and Reign of the Superman double feature. My kids and I came home, and I said, okay, here's the deal. You guys have to take baths. You guys have to get into your pajamas, and you have to do this without bothering me for the next 20 minutes so that I can finish reading what happened to Speedball. I said, and whoever can get through this without bothering me gets a toy at the end of the week. And like my kids, they've never been so good in their entire lives. But that's how, like, I had gotten up to the frontline part of it, and all I wanted to do was finish reading this, and it's so good, like from front to back. This guy's story from Civil War to the end of Fear Itself was amazing, and like now I just want to run out to Kevin Feige and be like, can I please direct this? Like either as a feature or as like a Netflix series. This is such a great story.
And he says, I've heard your show. No.
But no, anyway, I was, it's one of those where I would have never have thought to get into this guy's story, but it's really, really good. To your specific question, I really didn't know that much about Speedball going into it. I knew he was the character who was always like surrounded by those, like circular cartoon, you've been hit in the head kind of a thing. He's he looks like he's dizzy all the time. I saw his comics on the stands too, and I was just like, nah, this seems dumb to me. When you strip down the story, strip away sort of its superhero elements and all of that, you just take a look at the character. Here's a guy who essentially is going through post-traumatic stress disorder, and he's doing it by becoming somewhat masochistic. He's causing himself pain because he doesn't know how to deal with the internal pain of his guilt. Now, some of that is also, he's got this plan for revenge. So, like I said, it has this really like cinematic quality to it, where he's sort of flaying himself over his irresponsibility in the Civil War incident, in the Stanford incident. But he also, and again, in that sort of cinematic twist kind of way, he was like, oh, this thing that I've been doing to myself, this is really for you. And it has that like horrific end to it where Nitro is just mutilated basically because he's been put into this spiked suit of armor. Mm-hmm. Yeah, I just I don't know what else to say here without you asking me some specific questions. I just this I thought dealt with and maybe people didn't pick that up ultimately because it's still a superhero story, but I really felt like the big pull to this story is his internal struggle with his guilt and over what happened and how he deals with that, and wouldn't we all like to kind of jump out of a plane and and be able to physically fight, to sort of get through things. He's able to sort of do this. So for folks who maybe read this and have their own struggles with guilt, he's sort of playing up that fantasy, playing at that fantasy for you. To turn the page, you have the whole fear itself thing where people don't have to forgive you. They can learn to live with you, but they don't necessarily, or they can forgive you, but they don't necessarily have to like you. And I just thought that the whole interaction between him and Damien's mother was great, and the town reacting the way that they did. And I love the whole use of social media in the comic where you have all these tweets along with the narrative. I just thought it was a brilliant way to do that and very, 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 very modern. Mm-hmm. I like the fact that once he achieved the goal of bringing Nitro to justice, and he doesn't kill him, which was also, I liked, but once he brought Nitro to justice, he devoted himself to just trying to quietly, without any fanfare, trying to help the people of Stamford. And in a very human and very honest reaction, he's rejected by half the community and nearly beat to shit.
Yeah, I almost killed. Yeah. And
I thought, I really, of all the fantastic things that have been written, like Thanos and Warlock, Adam Warlock being madly in love, things like that. Of all the
Wait a second. I don't recall that happening.
I don't think that's how that goes.
Of all
it did last show, apparently.
Of all the fantastic things that have been written in the Marvel Universe, that was one of those ones where the writers really got the human instinct right. It was a very human, very real moment in a fantastic story.
No, every point that you made is great. I'm glad you liked it, number one. So that was my one thing. I was like, I knew you had never heard of Speedball, and you had no idea what the hell Penance was.
I totally want to see like an opening to either like a feature or at least the first episode of literally Faith No More's I Started a Joke, and them all like getting ready in front of the cameras and like going to do the raid on the house. You know what I mean? Like I see this in my mind now, like this cinematic portrait of that story.
Mm-hmm. Did I do good here? Was there anything that I missed on the road to redemption here for Speedball? Was there any other suggested reading material that you would say I should check out or we should check out?
I think everybody should check out his early adventures. I think that gets overlooked. I think you'll get a new respect for the Penance character once you see where this character came from. By the time I got to Fear itself, I'm going to be honest with you, I was ready to get on with it. I was like, okay, you know what? Give me my damn Speedball back. Give me Niles the Cat back. Give me my 10 damn issues and Steve Ditko, and let's move on. Good Lord. Man, Penance was some deep stuff, guys. Holy cow.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. I feel that, him going back to Stamford, him facing his, the mom of one of the victims of that tragedy was, that was probably one of the biggest and final steps. I think there's a point where he looks at Miriam and he says, you wouldn't believe how much you've helped me. Going through all this, those 7 parts, and he's trying to save all the souls that he can. And there's a lot of times where he is reminded of the words that she says that, we don't need superheroes. And he starts to kind of see where she's coming from there. But then she kind of concedes as well and says, no, there's times where we do need superheroes. Like I said, I think this is definitely one of the biggest steps in him feeling finally at peace with what happened. I don't think it'll always be there. And I haven't read anything recently with Speedball in it. I don't know if anything's changed due to the Great Secret War that happened there shortly after this. I remember reading Civil War #1. I remember reading Civil War Frontline #10. I never read Relentless, and I never had the chance to read the Home Front. And it gave me a good perspective on the character and the journey that they've taken over those 6 years. So, okay, well, then that brings this episode of Source Material to a close, our coverage on Penance, the redemption of Speedball. So let's plug away here. Chris, you are our extra special guest here tonight. We'll let you go first on the plugs here. What would you like to plug, sir?
All right, sir. So you guys can check me out on the Twitter at Charlton_Hero. Yeah, I'm one of those underscore guys. I apologize. You can also find me on my own blog, The Superhero Satellite, at charltonhero.wordpress.com. Find out about all our Superblog Team-Up events at #SuperblogTeamUp on Twitter or hit #SBTU. And you can hook us up there. As well, Redemption is coming, gang, on the January 23rd. Superblog Team Up returns for our Redemption event, and this is part of it. You've just experienced some of it. I'm going to run down a couple of the folks who are joining us this time. We have the Coffee and Comics podcast. We also have 2 Staple Gold comics reviews by Walt. Comics blog. Chris is on Infinite Earths. Longbox review. Between the Pages blog. The Unspoken Decade. Black, White, and Bronze blog. The Daily Rios, Crapbox, Son of Cthulhu, The Retroist, and this very podcast we're on right now. And oh yes, the Superhero Satellite as well. Right. And that's it for me, gang. That is one to grow on.
I appreciate it very much, Chris. Thank you very much for showing up here tonight and putting up with our nonsense. Ronnie Adams of the Screaming Boy podcast. Please, sir, what's your plugs?
I have a show called the Screaming Boy Podcast. We are a little bit out of commission right now, but you can definitely find us in archives on iTunes, the podcast app on Apple, iTunes, TuneIn, Stitcher, iHeart, right here on the network. We also do network exclusives. Just look up Screaming Boy Podcast. You'll find us there. Give us a follow, a like, subscribe, whatever you want to do. We appreciate it. And if you're on the social medias, say hi. We will say hi right back.
All right, very good. Mark Radulich, the Radulich in Broadcasting Network schedule, sir.
Alrighty. When this comes up, the next day we'll be doing a Damn You Hollywood for the movie Glass. It's part of the M. Night Shyamalama Ding Dong trilogy that includes Unbreakable and Glass. The following night, the Metal Hammer of Doom will be reviewing the new Papa Roach. Who do you trust? Who do you trust? That's what I want to know. Mr. Toxic Masculinity himself, my good friend, the punchy pugilist, Pat Mullen. He's everywhere you look, people. We're going to discuss Fuller House Season 4 around another TV party. The following week, it's all Runaways all the time. We've got Runaways, the complete Volume 2 here on Source Material. We've got a TV party tonight for Runaways Season 2, brought to you by the good people at Marvel and Hulu. Jesse and I are going to look a pale horse named Death right in the mouth. That's what we're going to do. It's the Metal Hammer of Doom. Sal Obiscato, formerly of Typo Negative, he's got a band called A Pale Horse Named Death. We'll review that for you, their new album. From our Canadian office, Andrew Graham and his lovely wife have come back to the Radulich and Broadcasting Network to discuss The Crown Season 2 on another TV party tonight. On January 26th and February 2nd, the Punchy Pugilist and I, as I said before, Mr. Toxic Masculinity, Pat Mullen and I, will be doing live commentaries for 2 boxing events. One is Thurman vs. Lopez, which is boxing on Fox, and then Sergey Kovalev versus Eliter Alvarez, which is going to be on ESPN. So continue to look for that. We're going to be doing more live commentary. We're saying goodbye to the MMA show at some point, but we're going to replace it with more live combat sports commentaries. As they're happening, why listen to the bozos doing the commentaries when you can listen to us instead? So check that out live as it happens. January 26th and February 2nd. Lastly, go back in our archives. You can check out our Teen Titans shows. We did a Source Material, 100% less mentions of nunsploitation on that show. But I'm sure I mentioned something else that upset somebody, because that's what I do.
You upset me every week.
Yeah, you don't count. And then Alexis Hana and a slew of other Radulich and Broadcasting Network panelist members came on to discuss the Greg Berlanti series Fuck Batman. No, I mean the Greg Berlanti series Titans. So go ahead and check that out. And the Metal Hammer of Doom kicked off the 2019 season in earnest with a review of Soilwork for Gleitenhaven. So go ahead and check that out. And then finally, just a quick correction here. We were supposed to do an on trial for Judgment Night, but it's perfect. So there's no reason. So it was released on its own recognizance. That's what happened there.
Oh, nice. Very nice.
Actually, what happened was Sean forgot we had a show. So we decided that on January 18th, we put Unbreakable on trial.
Yeah.
He prosecuted, I defended. You want to know what happened? You'll have to listen to that show. Because today is January 21st, in case everyone misunderstood what I was trying to say.
Time travel. All right. Anything else, sir?
No, I think I'm good. Thank you very much.
Very good. Ladies and gentlemen, go give the Radulich in Broadcasting Network Facebook page a like to stay up on top of all the great podcasts we have to offer. I'll throw in my cam plugs here at the end. So with that being said, thank you very much, Chris Bailey, for showing up here tonight and again putting up with our crap. We thank you very much, sir, for giving us the opportunity, number one, to bring you on to the podcast, and number two, for letting us be part of the Superblog team up. I really do hope that somebody out there enjoys the program, and we'll find out.
As we like to say here on the Radulich Broadcasting Network, please forgive us.
We look forward to
seeking redemption, people.
Yes, at some point. We look forward to offending you next week. So yes, but yeah, that being said, hey, thank you very much, everybody, for listening. We'll talk to you next week. Have a good one.
We're sorry.
Take care, everybody.
Thank you all for joining us. Make sure to give that Radulich in Broadcasting Facebook page a like to stay up on top of all the great podcasts we have to offer. We are at home on Spreaker, but you can also find us on iTunes, Stitcher, TuneIn Radio, and recently we have hit the air on Spotify. Find your favorite podcast platform and type in RADULICH to subscribe for some great content. If you enjoyed this show, please feel free to share and spread the word. And as always, we appreciate any feedback and look forward to entertaining you again soon.
Redemption songs. Redemption songs.
Let's rock and roll, gentlemen.
This is our first show with Chris.
Fuck, I'm misbehaving in front of a new person. Sorry.
I'm new. I'm virginal.
I'm not paying attention to shit.
Future reference,
you.
Chris Armstrong and Chris Bailey are two different people.
They are not.
Chris, you'll find out that I quit on a weekly basis.
Let me edit all that out and do this. Chris Bailey, why don't you do me a favor, Chris Bailey, and
say his name 6 more times?
Well, first of all, let me introduce myself. My name is Chris Bailey. We'll say it one more time. Chris Bailey. Just want to make that clear, everybody. Chris Bailey. I am Christopher Bailey.
The man, who, what was it, threw Gwen Stacy out a window or off a bridge or up an ass, or I don't know what he did.
Up an ass? Don't remember that one happening.
And from our Canadian audience office. Canadian office.
Words are hard.
From our Canadian audience. Take 2.
Where?
From our
Mark, question.
Sir.
Did you take the wrestling drinking game seriously tonight?
He might have. Is there Chris, is there an actual name for those things?
They're called just kinetic bubbles, really. That's
Okay.
literally all they
I didn't know if they had like a specific name for them throughout the comics or not.
Balls.
Balls.
Okay. So here's this guy who's always got balls in his face, right?
I'm stripping myself of my Twitter avatar as we speak.
I believe who were the nuns called again?
Sisters of Sin.
Yeah, I believe they were in the movie.
No, stop.
I'm shaking my head right now. I don't know if you guys can hear it, but I'm shaking my head.
Oh, nude nuns. I remember it now. I saw them in nude nuns with big guns. That's where I remember them from.
Oh,
Let's see, they're being used again.
would you like to take this show seriously? just for I don't know, 10 minutes? That'd be great.
I don't know any of these people, by the way. I have no idea. I have no idea. I'm PC like everybody else.
What has he been roped into?
I need redemption.
Ronnie Adams.
I loved it.
Okay, all right. You want to add to that? Anything about nunsploitation or anything like that?
No, he ruined everything. Why? I mean, there's a new person on the show. Behave.
Well, it's been fun being part of the Super Blog team up for this one episode, if this episode airs.